everyone. Welcome. Hopefully this thing is working. Thank you for joining today. You can drop your questions in the comments. There is a little bit of a delay between where we are and the stream, so we'll get to your questions at the end. We're so excited that you are joining us today. So today I'm joined by Liz Ligones and Sonia Kaushik, who between the two of them have lived many lives in the legal space over the last few decades. I'm excited to hear their stories and their perspective on the legal industry, technology, the evolution of it, trends and challenges, and where we go from here. If you like this conversation, there will be more insights like this at our annual user conference next April in Dallas, and we'll share the link to registration in the comments. All right, so to get started, let's just take a step back and talk about how we got to where we are today. Liz, will you start with a little bit about your personal journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Thanks, Laura. I'm so excited about this. So like you mentioned, a few decades in legal. I started in legal operations before it was a thing. So I was doing the role as a paralegal, had gotten into law school, decided I did not want to go. It was not for me, but I enjoyed the business of law, I suppose. And so was very process oriented and had some good mentors and leaders. And so ended up in doing, this is when like Redwells existed. I don't know if anybody out there remembers that, and file cabinets with a lot of papers. And it started with setting up a records management program for an M&A department at Citi. And then it evolved from there. Since then, I grew, basically I woke up one day and what I did had a name and a career. And I've since then have been in-house as a legal operations leader and a chief of staff to some GCs at companies like MetLife, Becton Dickinson, WeWork, and then a few years of consulting with UpLevel Ops. And I joined Mitratech here in April, just leadership in a different framework. And I went from paper to a lot of tech, and the evolution has been quite exciting, and it just continues to blow up.
Sonia?
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I started my legal tech journey around 2011, 2012. I really dove into the legal tech space there with creating and founding Eskme, which was a legal tech startup that was the first document marketplace for lawyers to buy and sell their documents and templates with other lawyers across the country. So I was working at a firm at that time in New York City, and I realized that, there was a need for collaboration to make it a little more efficient. And that's how I started the concept of Eskme. And it was a really interesting time for legal tech. I think it was the beginning of the true legal tech boom. And while I continued to do Eskme, I also continued my litigation work at several different firms in New York City. And then I moved over to some firms in Portland, Oregon, and worked through some commercial litigation, medical malpractice, and some criminal defense work. And simultaneously was in the technology space. And it was such an interesting parallel to be in both and have my career in both spaces. And I got to see a lot of evolution in the technology from, back in 2011, 2012 up till now. And then in 2022, I went in-house with Mineral and now joined Mitratech through the acquisition of Mineral earlier this year. So it has been a long journey of legal tech, litigation, transactional work, but it's been really awesome to see how the landscape has changed.
That's awesome. Thank you. And we're so thrilled to have both of you at Mitratech now and contributing to both our internal teams and strategy and also helping our customers on their journeys. So really excited to have you both at Mitratech and on this today. So when you look back over the last couple of decades, what are some of those big trends that you have seen or been part of?
Liz?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I'm trying to gauge the delay and how significant it is. So the biggest trend, and it's a continued theme today, are two things. One, how do we create capacity on the team, right? Legal departments are always constrained with the volume of work, and that has only increased with the increase in regulation, industry changes, political changes, everything that's happening right in the world has a direct impact to the legal department. And the legal department is one of those functions that touches every aspect of an organization. Everything from procuring goods and services, the selling aspect of your goods or services out to the world, employment issues, IT issues, right? It just runs the gamut. Legal really is at the epicenter of everything. And with that comes it comes a significant volume of being able to provide not only legal advice, but the biggest shift, right, has been in the legal department being set up, right? The general counsels, leaders of practice groups, individual contributors within that department, and being a strategic business partner. It's no longer providing advice and be like, that's on you, business, to decide. The expectation from the businesses is that you really are contributing and pushing the business forward. And for that reason, the second trend has been, how can a legal department, and I'm going to say this like whether you're a corporate legal department or in a law firm, how can you get to valuable data faster so that you're able to provide the analysis, the legal research, apply your legal judgment to that data to be able to provide the guidance and enable you to be that strategic business partner that you're, whether it's an internal client, meaning the business that you work with, or if you're in a law firm, right, your external, your client in itself, how are you enabling the success of that business? Samia, any thoughts there? Anything addition?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with everything you said, and I very much try to bring in my business experience with AskMe, and also, the law firm experience for me is very valuable to bring in-house and make sure that the legal team and department is not seen as the Department of No, or just like you said, an isolated team that needs to do the legal work and then pass it on. So I very much resonate with the legal team is a strategic business partner with executives, with senior leadership, with all parts of the business, and actually very much feel that legal is, when we talk about technologies, which we'll get into, when we talk about AI, one of the ways I've shifted in this trend is to actually try and help people understand that if you have legal as the center, and the spokes of that wheel are all the stakeholders in different business units, then you're actually incorporating a lot of compliance, a lot of risk, a lot of the legal issues at the forefront, and that's how we can be the best strategic partner. And we don't put ourselves in the position of being the Department of No, or the deal killer, or the slowing down the process. So that's one trend I think I am personally trying to bring into the professional space, but I also see it across other attorneys and colleagues. And in terms of legal technology trends, I would say, we all started with technology in the legal space being heavy in the e-discovery place. The e-discovery space was oversaturated by the time we got into the 90s and early 2000s. And so I think that's where lawyers really started to see that, okay, we're comfortable with this e-discovery concept and bringing technology in. And then I saw it move towards legal billing software to make that a little more efficient. Then case management came out, and that became a little more easy. It became easier for firms and attorneys to collaborate with their clients and make that management easier. And then I think we moved to legal ops. And now I feel the trend is taking technology, and we're pushing the envelope, and to some degree, the comfort level of the legal profession, by moving from more procedural, operational, administrative tasks with technology, but moving towards more substantive practice of law. And that comes with a whole nother set of learning curve and risk appetite.
I mean, you were talking about e-billing, right? That's that's like foundational table stakes today. And you just brought me back to, I'm like, I remember still getting paper bills in the mail when I started my career. And then, ooh, we got fancy with PDFs. To see where we are today and the advent of the technology and what we can do just like in the legal billing space alone is transformative.
Yeah, and I think about like things like e-filing, or after the world looks different after COVID, we got to see trials happen virtually. We got to see depositions be taken online. So we are always adopting technology. It's not new to the legal space, because our daily routine has changed. The way we serve subpoenas or pleadings has changed. So I think it's not as foreign as the legal profession feels when it comes to, we talk about AI. It's just another step for us to take.
Yeah, a little foreshadowing, I think, into our conversation around, we've been there, we've done that already, legal people. We could do it again.
Yeah, and you talk about things like e-discovery that revolutionized the way that we were doing work. And what are some of the things that were surprising to you in the technology space? And maybe we talked about this a little bit during our prep call, some of the things that people thought were going to be really big but ended up not really sticking.
Yeah, I'll say when I was doing Ask Me, I had folks that were very interested, and I think this is where the blockchain boom started, and crypto and digital currency. So we had a lot of interest from investors, but also other technology colleagues that were wondering if we were going to incorporate blockchain into the marketplace and the benefits of that, and maybe even dabbling into having a legal currency, cryptocurrency or digital currency, where we would be able to transact. And so we definitely entertained the concept of the blockchain and cryptocurrency and digital currency, but ultimately, we wrote white papers, we went to conferences, we really wanted to incorporate it, but we felt that it sort of came as a one-hit wonder, and the incorporation was uh, going to create more barriers for adoption for the legal profession than it would value. So we opted not to move forward with that. But ultimately, I think a lot of legal tech companies went through that process that we did and didn't ultimately choose to go through with incorporating blockchain or any of the digital cryptocurrencies. So I feel that was something that took the world by surprise, and everybody was talking about it. And then, it sort of fizzled out in terms of fully incorporating it into every technology out there. So I'd say I was probably surprised by the force in which those two came and went.
I feel like I'm not surprised by anything. And I'm probably going to flip this a little bit, is it's not surprising, and yet it's still surprising. And it goes to the conversation we just had a little bit earlier, is how much we go into like deep concern and panic over certain technologies coming out. And it's all rooted, I think, from a really good and valid place, which is the legal community is here to safeguard and manage risk. But when I think about e-billing as a simple example, I remember back in the day that huge concern around like, oh, we can't load our bills. Like, that is not secure. You're going to have like real matter specific line item detail, and it's going to get out into the world. And we very quickly got comfortable with that. I think, things around Zoom and being out on the internet. There's no way, we can't have video meetings. We're not going to have that relationship with our clients. How do we know that it's safe? And we were talking about things, right? Well, it's no different than using your Polycom in a conference room. And look at us today, right? Nobody can imagine a world pretty quickly where we don't have Zoom or team meetings or not collaborating in that sort of way. it's actually quite funny. What surprises me is that everybody now thinks that picking up your phone is quite novel, right? Everybody's like, we're having a telephone conversation, and they miss it. I think we just, the surprising thing is, like, even though we've overcome a lot of those challenges already, like how fast we still have that knee-jerk reaction in the community to be very apprehensive and fearful still, and maybe not so, I don't know, more positive around the possibilities while still safeguarding and managing risk.
That's such a good point. Yeah. And really can't be surprised anymore with anything new that comes out, especially with AI and how fast technology is moving just exponentially at this point. Sonia, I want to talk a little bit more about Ask Me. How did that come about, and what was sort of that catalyst for you that you were like, we have to do this?
Yeah, I was an associate at a firm in New York, and I was working for a small boutique firm and doing litigation. And I was the one that would do the late nights, all the research on like Westlaw, LexisNexis, and be drafting the motions or briefs, whatever was, the work at hand. And I realized that a lot of the things I was researching and writing had probably been done by another attorney in New York City. Like, for example, I think it dawned on me when I was doing a scaffolding personal injury case. And if anyone knows New York City, there's scaffolding all the time, everywhere, year round. And so I knew that someone else out there has done some of this particular research. And if I could only get that work product as a starting point, that would probably save me a lot of time, a lot of money, and it would make our practice so much more efficient. We would be able to take in more cases and actually make our clients happier by meeting certain deadlines or even beating deadlines. So what I did at the time was I would go to court and I would ask around and I'd say, have you ever done this? Even in my opposing counsel, it's a collegial nature for the most part. Yeah, you would ask and they'd say, oh yeah, I could dig that up for you. And so it was a very arduous task and usually didn't get a response. And then there was a listserv of personal injury plaintiff attorneys that I would send an email to, and I would just hope that I would get a response. And if I got a response, which sometimes I did, it would always be a quid pro quo type of request. It would say, yes, I have a motion that would probably fit what you're looking for, but what do I get in response? And that was hard to only work in this quid pro quo environment. It wasn't collaborative. It didn't have the air of collaboration or collegiality in which I thought we should be moving towards. There's nothing novel about research to the, for the most part. And so that's where the light bulb turned on for me. And I said, okay, people are willing to share, but it has to have this quid pro quo nature. So that's where the document marketplace came about. Then I realized I'm talking to more people, doing some more market research, having been in the actual practice while I am also starting a company, made it a little easier for me to understand the pain points and the solution, as well as what's really the mindset barrier that I'm going to have to overcome to get lawyers and law firms to adopt this whole marketplace concept. So it allowed folks of big law firms, medium, small, solo practitioners, even in-house, any attorney in the United States could sign up, create a profile similar to like a LinkedIn profile, and you could start uploading your own documents and you would tag them accordingly, and then you would be able to sell them. So the quid pro quo nature allowed folks to make money on documents that were exhaustive, sitting on their desktop, while they continued to practice. So it was another way for them to make money, but it was also a place for them to create a community, to collaborate more efficiently in their own practice, and also a place for them to increase their network and a personal and professional brand. And so it was a novel concept at the time. And I think some of the challenges were exactly what we're seeing right now with the early adoption of generative AI and other types of tools.
That's really great. I love the mindset that you had of somebody must have already done this so we can automate it, streamline it somehow. I heard someone say last week, and I wrote it down, I've been thinking about it every day. If you do something 3 times or more a week, you should be automating it. And they were talking about AI or other types of just automation in your email or other systems. So I think that mindset that you had from the start of let's not repeat ourselves, let's not replicate a lot of the same effort is really great. Do you have any other thoughts on like the how you overcame the technology resistance piece of that? Was there any of that in that, or people were really interested in just jumping in?
No, I think it was quite an uphill battle, actually. So I think one was the uphill battle was introducing technology and the idea of where is my work product going to be on this platform and this, what's the security of it? And, the same questions we have here now. But the other uphill battle is the mindset shift for the legal professionals to move from this highly competitive, um, prideful nature of doing our work, moving towards a more collaborative and efficient way of working. And so that was another hurdle that we felt like we needed to actually tackle first. We needed to show them what their value would be by collaborating or by sharing and then also receiving something back. And we had to do that by both qualitative and quantitative value. We had to show them that, their margins for their business would get better. They'd be able to take in more clients. We'd had to quantify that, what that might look like. We looked at the average time they spent on administrative tasks versus actual billable tasks. And a lot of times it's like 80% of a partner's time is done doing administrative or non-billable tasks, and 20% of their day is then left for procedural, actual practice of law, billable type of work. And so when they started to realize that by doing this collaborative approach and introducing technology, you're able to change that 80-20. You're able to actually potentially flip it over. So only 20% of your day is managing administrative and procedural things. And you're able to actually put your efforts and energy and time into the substantive practice of law, the analytical practice of law. And the other thing that I think was challenging along with this mindset shift was to also understand that the technology and the collaboration piece and the efficiency piece is not a threat to your expertise. It's actually an enhancement to your expertise. It's not supposed to replace you. It's not supposed to decrease your billable hours. In fact, if you utilize it correctly, any technology really, you should be using it to enhance it and therefore increase your capacity to do billable work or whatever task you have if you're in-house. So also realizing that that shift needed to take place, that you're moving from a position of being threatened, of being, made, I won't say obsolete, but devalue some of the work that you are doing, moving from a place of threat to enhancement and innovation, and having them see that there is a much larger value. It may not be so obvious, but if you start to move from the resistance mindset more to the acceptance and innovation mindset, that was really an important shift that we needed to convince people of.
I'm gonna piggyback on what you're talking about, Samia, and say put even a finer point on it, which I think is like the undercurrent of what you're talking about, is that your biggest hurdle is really the human element and the mindset that exists in the organization, right? Having been in-house, done the consulting piece, now I'm here on the tech side of things. That is the one significant hurdle, is winning and inspiring the people who are going to be impacted or using or benefiting from the technology that's being put in place. And it's really around value, right? So I mean, you use the word value. And why do they see it as a threat? It's probably, for many reasons, right? As a community, the legal community is risk adverse, right? They're trained to manage and mitigate risk as close to 100% as possible, right? They're trained in law school and in law firms. It's all about, right, the work product and the amount of time that you're putting into it, like that large memo and all of that research. And if you start taking that away, it threatens, I think, people's innate sense of like, what value am I bringing if I'm not delivering like this physical thing, right? Work product to people. And so it's really important for any leader in an organization, regardless of seniority that you have, right? Or official leadership title, to be able to tell that story of the value that you will continue to bring to the organization. What is that going to enable you to do? And the value that that technology or process change or optimization that you're putting in place is also going to bring, right? At the end of the day, everybody wants to feel needed, like they're contributing, right? And they do want to be able to enjoy life in some way. Everybody's not all about work all the time. There are some people out there who are like that, but like, right, they want to be able to spend time with their families or go to the gym or take a doctor's appointment. And so you really can't discount. And the biggest hurdle is, how do you bring them along in that journey? And for everybody or every function, that's going to look a little bit differently. I'm just thinking back when I was consulting at UpLevel, and I had this one client, and I was sitting with their leadership team. They were all gung ho. They were buying workflow. They were buying. They were doing a bunch of different things, and they were all in. It was going to be pretty transformational what they were thinking of doing, and all the leaders were bought in. And I sat down with them. I said, "This is great." I go, "Remember this. This is your anchor. Remember the strategy that we built. Remember your why, because you're going to need it. Because one of you is going to go sideways. One of you is going to freak out and say, 'No, I can't do this. No, this is going to have this impact.'" And they all giggled. And sure enough, a couple of months later, somebody did go a little sideways and started pumping the brakes. So it's really important that you have that vision, that you have a strategy, that you have an anchor to keep reminding everybody in the organization as to your why you're implementing a change. And it could be really simple. I mean, it could be about putting an Excel spreadsheet in place all the way to something a little bit more complex, like a Team Connect, right? All of that is driving change in the ecosystem, and it has real impact on the human element around how people see themselves and how they interact with others.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll just add one point to that. I remember doing some research for Ask Me, and we did this case study where one brief would take, or motion would usually take on average 11 hours from research to the first draft. And with Ask Me's capacity to provide a template, so you're not reinventing the wheel, it moved that down to 11 hours. And the argument from the law firm side is, well, I want to bill 11 hours. I don't want to bill 3 hours. But we had to then show the value of how many more things you would be able to bill in that 11 hours that you had, knowing that most likely, especially for small and mid-sized firms, that 11 hours of that chunk of time is going to most likely be disputed by your client, on one motion. It's having been in the practice, most bills are always disputed to some degree. You're taking hours and minutes off of things because the client relationship is really important. And so we really had to show the business case for folks to understand the value. It wasn't as obvious. And I think the same thing with AI here. When you put it in terms of the time you can save, the money that you can save, and oftentimes for things like in-house, it's very obvious about how much money and revenue you can bring in by actually becoming more efficient. So, I like to say it's a mindset shift. It definitely is. But with the mindset shift, you need to show the business case. You need to do those numbers and provide qualitative and quantitative value so that the person who's making the decision or the team can actually feel comfortable taking that risk on, understanding that there's greater value and it's tangible to some degree.
And speaking of Gen AI, right? Let's like put that in practice, right? There's a lot of concern around using it and like, hey, like, that there's value in the knowledge that I have, right? And all that time that is spent on research to then be able to apply your judgment and the scenario that you're in. I think that the use of Gen AI is only, like you said earlier, is enhancing the skills of that legal professional. And I say that because no matter what information you get out of leveraging Gen AI, whether it's using public data or you're using it in a very controlled way where it's using the data within your ecosystem and you have those controls in place, you still have to proofread it, analyze it, layer it. You still have to be able to tell the story. You have to execute on that. You have to be able to take that and mold it. You have to have the fluency to be able to mold it to the audience that you're talking to, right? And I feel like this is an area where the soft skills even become more important, right? It's not just about that legal. Right now, you really have more time to harness those skills, right? Because as a legal professional, it's not just about the advice that you're giving and the guidance, but it's also on the delivery of that and how you can influence and impact real critical business decisions. And that's a critical of being a business strategic partner and a leader in the legal space is your ability to really distill information really quickly and be able to articulate it in a way that is digestible by non-legal people, right? Like a business person doesn't want a 20 point memo, page memo on things. They really want to understand, like, what is it? What is the real risk? How are we going to mitigate it? And what are my choices and decisions to make? And being able to get to that information a lot faster so that you could apply that legal judgment is a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can say from doing trials, doing a trial, it's about human psychology. It's about the soft skills. It's about how you connect with the jury, and it doesn't actually, it can never really be replaced. The work product that you're coming into a trial could be used, could be bettered by technology and AI. But things like trials, those are human skills. A lot of that is mastering those human soft skills. Being in a law firm, if you're doing transactional work, I mean, a lot of times in my practice, what the client wants is quick turnaround, and they want to meet in person. They want to know that they can trust you, that they feel that you value them in their circumstance. These are things that are not going to be removed or replaced by technology or AI. And then lastly, in-house, now that I'm here, I can plug in any prompt into ChatGPT or any other tool, and I can get the first draft of a contract or terms of service or whatever I'm looking for. But that doesn't replace the requirements that I need to review. And for example, I can get a limitation of liability section that's created in 3.5 seconds. But if I don't know the nature of the deal, and I don't know what's at stake, and I don't understand the products or the services, I'm not going to be able to bank on the draft limitation of liability clause or the reps and warranties. Those all are very bespoke for the transaction that you're working on. So ultimately, these skills it cannot fully be replaced by AI. And that should give folks reassurance and confidence that their skills are not threatened. They're not devalued. And in fact, those skills are enhanced because now we're using technology and human skills and our analytical capacity to make the best type of outcome. We're not doing one or the other. We're actually using both. Work product can actually be even better than before.
What a powerhouse combination, right?
Yeah.
Really quick, just want to note, I do see we have a couple comments. We're going to take those at the end, a couple questions in the chat. I want to jump ahead a little bit since we're deep into the AI conversation now. When we're talking about AI, obviously it's everywhere. It's in every application now. How should teams think about putting those guardrails on now that that train has already left the station?
I'm going to go to what something Samia said earlier. Like legal has a seat at the table, a real critical seat at the table, right? So I think it's really important that they partner and be part of the AI task force that an organization may have. If they don't have it, be innovative, start one up. And it should be cross-functional, right? Be part of that thinking. And this is going to be a balance of risk appetite, and every organization has a different level of risk appetite depending on the industry, depending on the country and jurisdiction that they're in. I think it's really critical that, you know, those legal professionals have a sensitivity to that risk appetite and not try to push too far or too hard. Like really have a balanced, fair assessment. And get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which I know that's so cliche, and it's something that's probably making many lawyers out there quiver. But there is a way through all of this, right? You probably have more control than you think in the application of some of this technology. You can help shape it, inform it, guide it in a way that can be a win-win, not only for the business as a whole, but just think about the potential for the profession in itself. I think you really, if you marry the aspects of the tradition of law with innovation, I don't know. I think it's kind of exciting, right? We're at a space where we could do some pretty cool things together.
Yeah, I fully agree. I'll talk a little bit about what I've done, both at Mineral and then now with Mitratech. You know, taking and leading both companies through the AI and digital transformation journey was one, a privilege to do it, and was to some degree the Wild West, because we did it earlier than a lot of other companies wanted to and felt comfortable to. And it gave me firsthand experience on how to develop, one, the risk appetite, but how do you develop executive and corporate buy-in by putting these guardrails. And so some of the guardrails to your question is developing a committee or an advisory board, or if you don't want anything that formal, just your stakeholders meeting monthly. And you're talking about things internally and externally. If you're at a company, you can talk about, how do we want our employees and contractors and vendors, third-party service providers, subcontractors. Let's talk about those on one side and call them internal. How do we want them to approach the use of AI and these technologies when they're providing services for the company or on behalf of the company? And then externally, we look towards product. What product and services are we developing that's going to incorporate or be exclusive to AI or any of these technologies? So I look at it as external and internal. You've got to tackle them somewhat different. Internally, you've got to look at your risks. That's going to look different for every company based on what you do, how large you are, the assets that you have, the liabilities that you are exposing yourself to. So the analysis is going to look a little different, but you do need to run through that analysis. And oftentimes what I've seen is the largest risks on the internal side is making sure you have privacy concerns and compliance, that you have data security and your SecOps and InfoSec on board, and having them review from a risk and compliance standpoint. And then the third one would be from an intellectual property standpoint. You want to make sure that anything that's being used and created by your employees or vendors or subcontractors, you want to continue to own that work product or service result. And also you want to make sure that you're not having your employees and the internal side using trade secrets or confidential information or proprietary information. And so that process looks like an internal vetting. It comes to that advisory board where I would say legal is the center of the wheel, and all the stakeholders from product, engineering, finance, et cetera, are all the spokes of that wheel. And it starts with compliance. And even though we're seeing compliance change all the time from state to state in the US, but also globally with the EU AI Act, we have lots of changes coming down, and it's going to set the precedents for the globe. But if you're taking that into consideration before they're being affected and enacted, you can actually be ahead of the curve for all of the internal aspect, but also on how to develop your product from an external standpoint. So if you're providing AI services, you should also understand what the compliance requirements are. So I would say the guardrails start with that program, the advisory board, whatever you want to call it, and then you split it to external and internal, and you have a vetting process. And then you want to make sure ultimately that you train your company and employees. So have a training. Most companies have some cybersecurity or privacy compliance training. And on top of that, you should add an AI training. Make sure folks really understand how to ethically use the tools, and make sure they understand what requirements for work product disclaimers and disclosures are required. And I think that's the groundwork, and you can feel confident going in to what you may not feel confident in before. You have a little bit more reassurance that there's a process that this goes through, and we have to some degree control over how our employees and contractors are using it, as well as how our products are going to be facing our consumers.
And I would add to that, Samia, like the advisory board, not only from a compliance perspective and managing, the security risks associated with that and putting the guardrails in place, they could also be a place to like, where is it that we need to be thinking about applying Gen AI, right? Having been on the consulting side and now on the tech side, you will often get the question of like, well, what's the use, to give me a use case. And I always ask, well, what is it that you're trying to enable and or empower in your organization, right? The use case, we have plenty of use cases, and I'm always happy to share, but is that a relevant use case for the organization and the industry that you're in, right? There are many use cases in the contracting space, in the spend management place, in the workflow space, and what have you, but that might not be a priority or an area of focus for your organization. So really, coming collectively cross-functionally to figure that out is also really critical, right? Yeah, you should network and out there and see and get ideas from other organizations, but it's really important that you marry those internal needs and what the goals are of the organization to think about, one, what you're developing if you're in the tech space, what you're developing for customers, if that's even like going to make sense, but even for yourself, like, what are you trying to enable and empower your people to do?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the internal side. We run a process where we're looking at all of the current systems, and then we're also reviewing. We have stakeholders that review each use case that's submitted. And in the beginning, everyone has got a use case because it's an operational efficiency gain. And so to your point, we want to make sure that one, we're not having system dupes. And we're also not having multiple systems for the same efficiency problem. So, we're not using 3 different tools from 3 different business units who are all trying to solve the same efficiency problem. So that's also part of the advisory and the vetting, is that not only are we looking at it from a risk and compliance, as well as security and IP, but we're also looking at how do we make sure that we can scale one tool across the company cross-functionally. And that's what also helps, I think, to some degree, keep your costs down as well.
Absolutely.
That's a great segue, because you're talking a little bit about like how other teams should do it, but you're also talking a little bit about how Maitrotech does it. And we're in sort of an interesting place in this AI revolution, because we are a technology company that sells AI solutions, but we also use AI quite a bit internally, as you've already talked about. Can you tell a little bit more about Maitrotech's strategy for that and how we approach AI?
Yeah, Maitrotech is excited about AI. We want to, from the internal side, we want to empower our employees to do the best work that they can. And to Liz, your point about what's the use case, the process I just described is what we've implemented to ensure we are empowering our employees to use it ethically, safely, responsibly, compliantly, as well as making sure we're not saying yes to every single thing. It has to be more of a systemic operational issue and not a one-off. And then the process of looking through tools and going through the demos and looking through the privacy policies of certain tools and whatnot, that ultimately falls on your risk and compliance and legal departments. And that's also why I say that this time with Maitrotech, legal has actually been very involved in the process. In fact, have led the process to some degree with senior and executive leaders. We have been very involved in the internal side and putting together the policies that the employees follow, putting together trainings that the employees must take, making sure we have DPAs. Our DPAs include AI now, making sure we have AI included in our security vendor questionnaire. So there are a lot of places that have to incorporate AI, and we've done that through having legal be sort of the center of this transformation. And then we've also very much encouraged all of the products to use AI and develop it or a feature so that we can also enhance our products for our clients and customers. But I will say we are taking a very methodical and thoughtful approach. We are not jumping into the AI water, so to speak, just to say we jumped in. I think we're taking a very systematic approach. And we're very thoughtful in the tools that we're going to use, the development that's being taken place. We do extensive testing, and we do betas and pilots for any product that's going to actually be launched. And we're also ensuring that all stakeholders from that process, the AI process, is aware, so we don't have to go back and redo things as we're trying to also get to the, into the race of AI. So I think we're managing this expectation to jump in with both of our feet, but at the same time, we're saying, let's put all of our efforts and do this correctly in the areas that are going to provide our clients the most value in the shortest amount of time. So we're taking a very methodical approach and ensuring that our partners feel really, really confident in us, and that they are able to also provide us with feedback and improvements so that, we're not doing, we're kind of doing quality over quantity right now, but we're encouraging on both the internal, external sides of the business to adopt AI and to move forward with it, because we know as a leading company in several industry verticals, we are going to set the precedent.
Yeah, to piggyback on that too, Samia, is that having been on the outside watching Mitra Tech and other vendors in this space, right? It's very easy when you're on the outside to be like, oh, why don't you have this feature? And why don't you have that? And like, why are you moving so slow? And what have you? But once you get to really, really like understand how an organization works, what I'm really excited about Mitra Tech is this, like, we really do honestly listen to our customer base and are constantly asking for feedback through the idea portal, through our strategic business reviews, in our one-off conversations that we're having with customers. We want to know your use cases. We want you to test. We want you to be proactive and do pilot programs with us. The success of our technology and being able to deliver a quality product to the organization is really contingent on that participation. So it's hugely valuable. It's huge to our organization, and it really does move the dial on what we develop, and that's super exciting, right? And I think the way that we do it methodically lines up and aligns with the culture of the industry, and it's speaking to that, right? We want to make sure that what we're putting out there, not to be like necessarily first, but I'm a little competitive, so I always like to try to be first. But if we're going to do it, we're going to do it well, we're going to do it strong, and it's going to be something that the ecosystem really wants. And when we come out strong, knowing that there has been a lot of research and work put into it, but also knowing, like, guess what? We're going to have hiccups because things happen, and then having that valuable feedback from our partners, right? From everybody who's using it is immediately baked in and really taken very seriously. So to me, that's the one thing that I think is really, it's something that I'm really proud of our organization, is the amount of rigor that we put into that, and that we really do value that the human element of like matching, right, what people are saying, what they really do care about, and helping it inform the design of the solutions that we put in place.
Yeah, and I'll add just that, because the adoption of technology and the use of technology rapidly outpaces legislation from a global standpoint, there is going to be discomfort for lawyers in-house or not in the adoption, because we like to work with guardrails. And so to Alora, your point of the question, we have to put together what we consider to be reasonable guardrails without actually having definitive guardrails given to us through regulations and laws. And so it's our job to the point of, this is something that requires analysis. This is something that requires looking at laws that are coming down and understanding what is the intent behind this, not what the actual law is going to say, but what's the intent behind legislation that's coming down state to state or country to country. If you can understand the actual intent behind it, and most of the times it's consumer protection. If you can understand that, then you can put together your guardrails without having a full roadmap in front of you. And that can help you take on that risk. That can help you get comfortable with a larger risk appetite. And that will also help you if you're in-house particularly, but even if you're not in-house, that will also help you become more of a business partner. Whereas instead of saying, well, we can't do this, it's too much of a risk, we don't know anything yet, states don't know anything, we know. That is the Department of No that I was talking about earlier. And so in my position with Mitratech, I don't want to be the Department of No unless
you're not. I can vouch for that.
Unless I absolutely have to. But usually I can take the business brain, and I can take my legal brain, and I can find something in between. And I have to read between the lines, because legislation takes longer than technology. And so to get comfortable with creating guardrails, you really have to understand the root of the legislation that's coming down, and then look to other parallel legislations like GDPR and CCPA. Look to, other things that are parallel that are going to give you that confidence that, okay, look, we're not going to do it perfectly. There is no perfect. And oftentimes, if you want to do it perfectly, you don't have the resources to do it perfectly, especially because the legal budgets are usually a little less than we want. So it's also important to say, hey, let me pick and choose the most important pieces of compliance and prioritize those. And then we move forward, and it's an iterative process. It's not that the AI policy we developed is always the policy and it's never going to change. That's going to change, and it should change. And the same thing with our trainings, and the same thing with our stance on product development. That's going to change as we learn more. But at some point, you've got to jump in, and you've got to take what you know and what you can assess and make that your life jacket, and then continue moving through the waters and getting confident to swim without it.
Samia, that's like digestible and actionable advice, right? Like don't take too much on, right? Because it could be so overwhelming and daunting. I love it.
Thanks.
And a great soundbite. We love that too. So we're getting to the end of our time here. We had a whole bunch of more questions and topics to discuss. I think I'm going to volunteer you both here on the spot for a part 2 in January. But I do want to leave with one question as we close out this and close out the year. What is it that you're most excited about for at Mitratech in 2025?
Liz, go for it.
Oh, okay. I saw you. I'm excited for Interact, to be honest, and to be able to interact with so many of our users and hear how they're using our solutions. But really, I want to have more of these conversations, right? I think the more that we have these conversations, share insights, hear from others in the community, can be such a huge driving force towards long needed change within the industry. Like, one of the reasons why I switched from legal operations onto the tech side is because I've been talking about the same thing for so long in-house, and I wanted to see it from the reverse, and being able to see that here at Mitratech and touch more companies that I even did in a consulting way allows me to be able to learn faster and figure out a way to really, how can we have impactful change so that so many talented, passionate people who are in the industry can be their best selves, right? Professionally and personally. I think some of the stuff that we could do can really can really do that.
I would be remiss. It would be remiss if I said I wasn't excited about the AI products that MatriTech is launching. You know, we have some really exciting things coming up in the next year, and it's going to be a great learning process for us internally. And I think, you know, we've done a lot of our due diligence, or a lot of our customer research, and we know what our customers want, and I'm excited to give them that. We have Ask Aries, a digital assistant that's going to be such a wonderful addition for customers. And there's so many other exciting things from the AI roadmap that we have planned. And I look forward to, you know, being part of that journey, and also getting the feedback and making sure that we are making this a collaborative approach with our customers as well. You know, this is the nature of our company, is that we take feedback and we continue to evolve, and we make ourselves better, and we build that client and customer relationship. So that has also been a really exciting thing to see it as building together instead of building and just offering. So I'm excited about that. I'm really excited to now do a part 2 on this. And then I'm also excited to do Interact, which Liz and I will both be there speaking, and hopefully provide you all who are joining today with some additional insights and some takeaways, so that you can implement them in your daily life.
Now, I would be remiss, right, just to say, like, if you are a MatriTech customer, right, and you're curious to hear about what we're doing, or you want to be an early adopter and help, you know, inform and guide the roadmap, please go to the idea portal. Call your MatriTech friends today. Call one of us. I don't know, call, nobody has our number, like message us, and let's talk, right? I think together we can make a powerful impact in the solutions that we bring to the ecosystem.
Yeah, and just to add, you know, I know we have questions we didn't get to, and perhaps we have comments or questions from those who are watching. But, you know, if you have questions, I am happy to have people reach out and further the discussion offline, and be of any kind of help to those that are looking for it.
I echo that. Just find us on the interwebs, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Sonia, so much for taking time out of your day for this event. And I'm looking forward to our part 2 next year.
Same. Thanks for having us back.
Awesome. Thank you, and happy holidays.